This is Sean with Voices of Racing, and I'm speaking with an Indy 500 legend, Scott Goodyear. How are you doing, sir?
Sean, I'm doing terrific. Thank you. You say legend, but I think there's a lot more legends out there than me, but I appreciate it.
Well, at least you're one of them, right? I would say that you are definitely one of them. All right, so my first question to you is, when did you get started in racing, and who are some of the major teams and people you've been able to work with over the years?
Well, like all of us, started in go-karting at a very young age of 9, and probably about 10 years of doing that, getting into junior formulas like we always do, and probably spent another 10 or 11 years before arriving in, at that time, it was called CART, Championship Auto Racing Teams, which is where I came across the Unsers, the Andrettis, the Sullivans, the Ray Halls. I mean, you just name it, all the names were there. And so I really think it was 1990 when I arrived, what I call in the big leagues, which was IndyCar at that time, Championship Auto Racing Teams. And for a young kid coming out of Toronto, Canada, that was used to stick and ball sports, getting involved and getting involved in something of this nature was truly a lifelong journey.
Now, I also understand, is it Pennzoil, was that one of your major sponsors?
Yes, actually, when I started out, gosh, being in the business as long as I've been in the business, McKinsey Financial Corporation was the first sponsor in my full-time IndyCar series ride, and that was the blue and silver car, which is very well known as you might know, for the 1992 finish. That's still the closest finish today in the Indianapolis 500 history between Al Jr. and myself. So McKinsey Financial was the first car, and then drove for the Budweiser team, the Valvoline team, the Pennzoil team, all in IndyCar, and fortunate to do a lot of stuff in endurance racing. Also drove for the Porsche factory at Le Mans and the Audi factory here throughout North America, including the Jaguar factory too, and things like the 24 Hours of Daytona. So quite a very different type of motor racing resume, if you will. But the highlight, as it is for everybody, is the Indianapolis 500.
So here's the shot of when you and Al Jr. went over the finish line. He was just a half a second in front of you. If you could please describe the last couple laps, if you could go into that.
Yeah, and I always tell Al, and now is in my position with the as a race director for Formula 3 and Formula 4 in this country. Al's involved in a team, so I see him all the time. We speak all the time, and every one of the 10 times, I always remind him that the cars were so close going across the finish line that I must be able to get a little bit of that prize money, because usually they're like 5 or 6 seconds apart. So I always kid him that, as close as it was, he probably should hand over a little bit of that prize money after all these years. But a lot of fun with that. I will tell you that for me, for a guy that started dead last and 33rd that day, it was a thrill to be that close at the finish. But running against the Unsers, very tough program. It was only my third start at the Indianapolis 500, and Al took me to school. There's no doubt about it, and I tell him that all the time. I think he'd been there since 1983, had a lot of oval experience, and I was watching him driving IndyCar races before I was able to get to the Indianapolis 500. Just a true professional, and no real dirty play, if you will. We had some of the last 10 laps of the flat out racing that I've ever done in my life. 223, 224 miles an hour average, if I can remember. And I don't think we both took our foot off the gas for those last 10 laps. So certainly a thrill. Probably surprised it's still the closest finished today after going on, almost 30 years. So, we have a lot of fun over it. We've done a lot of promotional stuff over the years around the 1992 finish, but still always amazes me after 500 miles looking at that picture, quite how close it is.
Yeah, and you being able to start out at 33 and make it all the way to the front, that's quite a testament.
Well, it was, but it's a big team effort. It was very cold that day, that if you can recall that, and I have people that still 50% of the fan mail today is wrapped around this finish, that, usually in the story in there is that, we weren't ready for the cold temperatures and what have you. You had to really be patient, as you always have to be in a 500-mile race. But probably my lack of experience probably made me be more apprehensive at the beginning, which probably allowed me to understand more about the conditions. And there were some people that were veterans that really tried to push the issue, and it didn't work out for them. So no, we were very lucky. That finish, like I said, still today I'm amazed. And over all the years that I did television for ABC and ESPN, which was 17 years, it was the race between Marco Andretti and Sam Hornish Jr. when Marco looked like he was going to win coming out of turn 4, and Sam Hornish got him just at the line. And being in the television booth that day, I experienced firsthand what a close finish meant to all the people, not only in the stands, but also at home, because I lived it. As an analyst, you sit back for the last half a lap and let the play-by-play guy take over. And so you watch that last half of a lap at the finish, if you will, when the play-by-play guy is doing his work, for me as a fan. And the place erupted when Marco got passed by Sam Hornish. And then I just looked around out of the booth and I went, wow, this was really movement. This really moved me. And it was on that drive home that night from the racetrack after calling that finish where a light switch went on. And I went, I get it now. I understand what people saw in the 1992 finish. And, and I'm sure Al probably gets just as many notes and people talking to him about that finish as I do today. So yeah, just tremendous appreciation for what that finish means today, more so than when I was continuously driving, or even more so when I was in the television booth. It took 20 years for me to realize what that meant to all the race fans out there.
Was there any major moment in that race when you almost went sideways and lost control and you thought this is it?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of people sliding when the track temperature was very low, and I remember you work in the car and you start to sweat a little bit, and then there was a yellow because of a crash, and you're sweating, but then you start to get chilled. You're just trying to keep your body warm to be able to respond back to the green flag racing, because when you get the green again, you're back to going 230 miles an hour. So I certainly remember that by far. And the funniest thing, if you will, I can remember is because I was dead last in the field. You're trying to warm your tires up before the green on the parade laps, and I said to Derek Walker, my team owner at that time, I said, Derek, I go, this is going to take a long time to get tire temperature in the car because I'm trying to warm my tires up and I'm sliding. I almost lost control of the car. And then about a half a lap later on the parade lap, that's when Roberto Guerrero lost his car and then ended up going off and hitting the wall and taking himself out of the race. And he was on pole position. And Derek Walker got on the radio to me and he goes, God damn it, Scotty, I told you to take it easy, because he thought it was me that went off and hit the wall, because all they do is get a report on the radio in the pit lane saying cars into the wall, cars into the wall. And we just had that conversation. So he thought it was me. And I got back in the radio and I said, Derek, it's not me. It's not me. So it was sort of funny, but it was just tough, not only just to get in the race, but, it was tough just to get a momentum going, some type of program where you feel like you're driving consistently because of all the yellows that day. It was very, very cold.
All right, so we've got a promo poster image here, and both of your hair looks wonderful, by the way, in this shot.
Yeah,
and obviously, Ski-Doo was a sponsor of yours, and I know that they used to race in northern New Mexico and Chama. Did you ever race snowmobiles with Unser Jr.?
We never raced against each other, but I did race snowmobiles. I grew up in Toronto, Canada, so obviously a lot of time for winter. My father was a motorcycle and snowmobile dealer, so I was always on something motorized growing up. And then, like I said, even raced snowmobiles, but never raced against any of the Unsers in snowmobiles at all. But, we have some conversations about snowmobiles. Both love snowmobiling. Although, this age now, I got to say, for me anyways, it's starting to get a little bit too cold for being out there driving snowmobiles. But this was fun because something that we were both passionate about, both with the Ski-Doo brand at that point in time and also the Sea-Doo brand. for summertime sports. So it was something fun that we got to continue living part of our finish of 1992 over.
So what exactly was this poster? Was it just promoting the brand in general and you guys being together? Why did they bring you together for this promo?
Both probably because of our love of snowmobile riding, and then also watercraft, because Bombardier makes the Sea-Doo craft also. But it took the opportunity to bring two drivers that just lived one of the closest finishes in the history of the Indianapolis 500 and just play off that moment. So it was that, along with a lot of other companies, and including the company that I drove for at that time, McKinsey Financial Corporation. You then end up on almost like a speaking tour, if you will, or a promotional tour over the finish. It's no different than if you've done well in the Olympics and you end up going across the country and doing tours, I'm sure, for all those athletes. And and it was well received. In my hometown in Toronto, the coverage was plenty, and the Unser name was already well known in Canada, not only because of the family winning the Indianapolis 500, but also because Al used to drive up there. Al Jr. used to drive up there at Moseport, my home track, and in the Can-Am series, and he also raced up there in Super V. So the Unser name was very much respected and loved up there. So Al just gained a lot more fans across Canada when the closest finish happened also. Yeah.
All right, so this article you supplied me, and it's titled "Great Scott," and it's what was the publication?
That was the Toronto Sun newspaper in Toronto. We had the same type of coverage in the Toronto Star, and those were the two major papers back then at that point in time. For a Canadian to come that close to winning the Indianapolis 500, it just really gave a lot of momentum to motor racing in Canada. And this was also a time when McKinsey Financial Corporation, the largest financial house, mutual fund house in Canada, so it was really great for their business that, a Canadian driving their car had come so close to winning the Indianapolis 500. So it was, yes, it's labeled as Great Scott, but there was one person that was greater that day, and that was Al Jr.
And does it show your hand in the air and his hand, or his head with the wreath around it? Are those the two images?
Yeah. And myself on the right there with a hand in the air, just waving to the fans, because the place erupted, and it's funny because for me, honestly, I felt like I lost, like race drivers do. You either win or you finish second, and that's like losing. So I don't think that I really understood the impact that day had when I was living it, and like I said, I don't think I understood the impact it had on the crowd until I was in the television booth in 2006 with the Marco Andretti and Sam Hornish finish, and then really understood the impact that it had to the race fan. And and it's come around full circle now, if I may add, because I was a young driver out of karts into junior formulas. I went and watched the Indianapolis 500 before I ever got a chance to drive it. And then I went there and drove for all those years. Then I spent 17 years with ABC and ESPN covering the sport in the booth. And then I spent a couple of years doing some spotting here for Fernando Alonso when he was driving. And then in my new occupation now as a race director, I went last year for the very first time and went with my family and sat in turn one as a race fan. Took my ticket and went through the turnstile at the Speedway and went in with my kids and we sat there in turn one, and I lived it the first time as a fan. And honestly, Sean, it's come around full circle now, because now I get the full picture of what the fans experience and why they love IndyCar racing so much. Just the buildup and the green flag and all the cars rushing to you in turn one was you have to experience it once. And yeah, I raced it for many years and called it for television for many years, but it took all these years to be able to come full circle to really appreciate what the Indianapolis 500 is.
So do you happen to know if there's anyone else that went from last at least to second?
I don't know if there is. I'm sure people probably came close. certainly nobody came from, that far back and probably had a shot at winning it. That day, just to get to that point, though, like I mentioned, so much went on that day with cars spinning out in front of you, the cold temperatures, trying to get the temperature in the tires. And then, and Al will tell you the same thing. Michael Andretti had us both covered that day. And I remember calling on the radio and saying to the team owner, Derek Walker, because I was doing 2:24s and race pace, which is pretty darn good. And I said, I was second at that time. And I said to Derek Walker on the radio, how far is Michael ahead? And because I felt like I should be catching him. And he was delayed. He just says, I'll check into it. A couple more laps go by, and I called him again. He goes, hey, your pace is great. Don't worry about it. Just keep going. And I found out after the race that Michael was doing 2:25s, 2:26s, and pulling away from us. So that was very interesting. But I got caught up in traffic in turn 2, and Al got a good draft on me going down the back straights towards turn 3. I made it difficult for him, but not, I didn't block him or try to move him into the wall, because you can't at that speed, obviously. And that's not my way of driving. But that was the pass for the race lead at the time, because shortly thereafter, Michael fell out with an engine problem. And then we went back to the restart with 10 laps left to go. And that's when we had, those last 10 laps of just chasing each other, or me chasing him around the racetrack. So, tremendous, from the last row, but we finished second. And, and Al, I still remember his comment in Victory Circle when he was asked about winning the Indianapolis 500. And he said, you just don't know what the Indianapolis 500 means. And as a driver, I think we all understand what it means. So for him to have 2 victories there, along with all the other things that he's done in endurance racing and IROC and everything else that he's won, should be a very proud man for his 60th birthday.
So this year we're coming up on the 40th anniversary of that race between you two and everyone else, and it is obviously his 60th birthday in April, right before May. So honoring the Unsers, we lost Al Sr. and Bobby last year. What would you like to say about some moments maybe you've been able to share with them, and what you'd like to say to honor Bobby and Al Sr.?
Just to be able to be on a racetrack with the Unsers was very special. 1992 with Al winning, myself second, and then Al Sr. Being in third, surrounded by the Unsers. But, I look to my very first drivers' meetings when I got involved in IndyCar racing full time, and to look around the room and to see all the names that were there, including the Unsers. It made this kid from Toronto feel like, what am I really almost doing here? Because there was just such a legacy with the families that are there, the Unsers and the Andrettis and the big names that are there. But, to be able to watch them on television, and then to have a chance to be able to go and participate in races, and then to be able to get to the Indianapolis 500 and to be able to be on the same track as any of the Unsers was truly a dream come true. And the class that the Unser family has goes without saying. Was able to do probably one of his last promos here with Bobby, because he would always come in the month of May, and then we went over to the Indianapolis airport and did a promotion right there in the foyer area of the Indianapolis airport. And I just really got a chance to see again, this is quite a few years ago, about how special he is in the name. People are coming off the planes and either going to the gates or coming off the planes or what have you. And he was like a magnet to all the fans. It just really showed me what the Unser name meant in motor racing. And Al Sr., very quiet, but anytime he strapped in a race car, you knew that he was going to be a threat to win. And I've read that about other drivers saying that about Al, including Mario. So high words when it comes from Mario Andretti. And, I have a lot of running time against Al Jr. In my IndyCar career. And you knew that if you were going wheel to wheel with Al Jr., that you didn't have to worry about anything going on. You weren't going to get put up into the wall. It was going to be clean racing. And when you're doing 230 miles an hour, or maybe even close to 240 at a place like Michigan, you really respect that. And that's the type of driver I am too. So I hope that, he has a tremendous 60th. I'll be giving him a hard time throughout the season because I get a chance to see him a lot, like I said, in our current position with racing series that we do with our F4, F3, and FR. And he's making an impact right now for the young drivers coming into the sport. He's with a team called Future Star Racing, and he helped a young driver, Arie Jr., last year learn about single-seater racing, and then Arie Jr. is now moving up to Indy Lights. So Al has so much experience driving a race car and sharing information with people that he's already making an impact for the younger drivers coming to the sport today. So we're both chasing down the same path right now, and it's really enjoyable to be able to work with him and on that front for sure.
Well, Scott, I really appreciate your time today, and I commend you on your career, and obviously that great moment when you and a little Al were neck and neck going down the straightaway for that final win for Al and you in second. But I know they say if you're not second, then you're last. But coming from last to second, that is impressive, and I don't know if anybody's going to be able to pull that off and have that stat. But anyway, I really appreciate your time. And is there anything else you'd like to say to Al Jr. or his wife, Norma?
Just enjoy the 60th, and we'll see you trackside. And one great legacy for the Unser family. And Al, you are proving everybody proud by what your commitment is to young drivers today in the sport. So happy 60th, and we'll see you trackside very soon.
Okay, we'll just stay on the line. I'm going to close this one out.